welcome. I am Jamie Van Cuyk, and I'm so excited to be speaking with you today and sharing with you 3 tips for having employees who are worth their paycheck. This is such an important topic because if you're going to hire, you're going to want to feel like that person is producing for you the quality of work, the level of work, and everything that makes it so you feel satisfied when you hand over your hard-earned money to them. This is something that is really that kind of make or break. If you have people on your team that you feel are a drain on your expenses, you're not happy. And if you're not happy with your team, you're most likely not going to be giving everything to your clients. You're most likely not going to be that great people manager. And it could really feel like your business as a whole is a drain on you instead of something that lifts you up. And if you have employees who are worth their paycheck, it really creates that whole positive environment for you, for your clients, and for that future business that you want to create. So I'm going to teach you how to have employees who are worth their paycheck. Overall, in today's session, there's going to be 3 main takeaways, 3 main things that we are going to go over. The first thing that you're going to get out of today's session is how to prepare to hire someone who will produce you a positive ROI. The second thing you're going to get out of today's session is how to find the best candidates. So you prepared. Now, how do you actually get the best candidates in your pipelines? That way you can hire the person who's going to produce a positive ROI. And then finally, the last thing you're going to get out of today's session is how to turn any new hire into a great employee, and then how to keep them there. Because having an employee who's worth their paycheck does not stop when you present them the offer letter. There's actually work you have to do after they're on your team to make them someone and keep them someone who is worth their paycheck. All right, so who am I and why am I speaking to you today on this topic? Well, as I said, I am Jamie Van Cuyk, and I am the owner of Growing Your Team. At Growing Your Team, we help business owners gain the confidence so they can hire like a pro. We do this through providing hiring guidance, hiring education, and even hiring services like writing job descriptions, writing interview guides, and even taking a lot of the hiring work off your plates and onto our plates so that way you can focus on your business while you're getting the support you need so you can master the art of hiring and get those team members who are worth their paycheck. Our sweet spot of clients is we love helping businesses bring on new positions for the first time. This is everything from that very first employee, that very first assistant or junior you who's going to help take work off your plate, help you grow and expand and scale your business, all the way up to helping that CEO who maybe has delegated all the day-to-day, all the client work, but they're still doing every leadership role themselves. So we help them hire either those entry-level first level managers all the way up to those additional C-suite, senior level managers, whether that's their director of operations, their director of finance, their director of whatever it is. So that way they can truly step into that CEO space and have an amazing leadership team that's supporting them day to day, month to month, year to year to be successful in their business. Because hiring and delegating and getting over those fears doesn't stop when you hire your first employee. You have to make sure you're truly making the steps every time you hire to really become that CEO of your own business. All right, so let's jump into today's presentation to teach you how to get employees who are worth their paycheck. One of the top questions that I get when I'm working with clients or when I'm doing presentations like this is, will my employee be worth their paycheck? Will I be able to earn more money because I have them? Or more often, will I be able to sustain my business financially once I bring this expense into my company? Because let's face it, even part-time team members are expensive. When you think about the hourly rate, when you think about even what you pay contractors and freelancers that help you on one-off projects or those things that aren't your area of expertise but are needed to keep your business functioning, it is a huge part of your budget. So how can you make sure that part of your budget is what is a positive return versus a drain. So will your employees be worth your paycheck? And one of the things that I first tell all my clients when they ask this is, when you fill the right positions with the right people, you should have a positive ROI. So let's look at this. First, the right positions. So it's making sure you're hiring the person that you need. And it's the person that you need today. Yes, we can look a little bit into the future and say, okay, in the next 6 months, if this happens, this happens, this happens, this is how my business is going to evolve. So maybe today I need this, but in 6 months, I'm definitely going to need this. And you know that evolution because you know it's going to happen based on how your business has been changing. But other times you need to sit there and say, I need this person today. A year from now, I might need someone completely different, but I'm not going to hire for who I need a year from now. I'm actually going to hire for who I need today, because if I don't get this person today, I'm never going to get to the spot where I need someone different in a year. So sometimes you have to realize that who you need today might be different than who you need in the future, but you need to hire for who you need now. And then fill it with the right people. Okay, you know what position you need to fill. You know what position is going to give you that best ROI that's going to help you move the needle the farthest. But now you need to put the right person in that position. And we're not just talking about someone who can do the task. We're talking about someone who will also fit in your culture, who will fit with your management style, who will fit with your ability to train and mentor people. Because these things are important when you're bringing on a team member that's going to report directly to you, that's going to work with your clients, who's going to work with the rest of your team if you currently have a team. It's not just about can they do the work, it's about can they fit into your organization. So when you fill the right positions with the right people, you should have a positive ROI. So let's dive more into what this positive ROI looks like. This is something that you're probably saying, I got this, I know this, but I always say, let's break it back down to the basics, because sometimes we're so used to doing things for other people. We're so used to certain terms and things like that, that sometimes we forget to look at these things in our own business. So the first ROI that we're going to look at is what we call financial ROI. So this should be pretty straightforward of what we're looking for here and what we're measuring. Financial ROI is when you earn more money because you hire. That is your goal. I hired this person. I have the ability to bring on more clients. So therefore, my company is going to earn more money. I have the ability to go on the second venture. So I bring in a different income stream. So I can only do that if I bring in someone to help me. So I'm going to bring in additional funds from either my current income stream or a different income stream because I hire someone to help me. The goal with the financial ROI is the revenue increase that you receive because this person's on your team is greater than the cost of that team member themselves. So basic math, if you're paying someone $10,000 a year in a part-time position, you should be bringing in $11,000 plus because you have that person on your team. So $11,000 additional than you're bringing in today. Obviously, our goal is probably for that to be higher, but just simple math, we're saying if you're paying someone $10,000, you want to be bringing in $11,000 or more additional because that person's on your team. There's another type of ROI we look at when it comes to hiring, and this one is time ROI. So with time ROI, what we're saying here is the cost of the cost of this new team member is covered by our existing budget, but that is okay because all I'm looking is to reduce the amount of hours that I am working. So your current business can cover the cost of this team member, and you don't care if you ever earn another dime because you hired someone. You just want to stop working 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, 50 hours a week. Maybe you don't even want to work 40 hours a week anymore in this business. You're okay with just shifting the work from your plate to someone else and knowing that you're not going to get any financial return on hiring this person. So our goal is the time that you save is worth to you more than the cost of having that team member. So yes, once again, simple math, you're paying this person $10,000 a year, maybe for a part-time position. You're paying them $65,000 a year for a full-time position. But to you, when you look at your budget, that is 100% okay because it saves you time. You no longer have to be that person who's doing that work. You no longer have to be working 60 hours a week. You get that time back. Time ROI, if you're going to hire for that purpose, you have to be very clear on it. You have to be very dedicated in measuring it in that way. I've seen too many business owners say that time is the reason that they're hiring, but then they get frustrated because they're not getting that financial ROI. It's okay to have time being part of the reason you're hiring, but have your measurement be a financial ROI and knowing that we're going into it with a financial ROI thing. So even though time is something additional that you get out of it, that your true measurement and true reason you're hiring for is to increase your revenue. If you go into having time be your measurement, but then you're kind of frustrated that you're not getting any additional revenue in, that you're not seeing those budget numbers change when it comes to revenue in, but you're seeing an increase in expenses going out, you're going to be frustrated with that team member. So you need to be very clear. The other thing you need to be very clear of if you're measuring time ROI is taking the time that you're saving and putting it to something that you want. So too often, sometimes we say, oh, look, I no longer have to work 60 hours a week because I hired someone. Oh, wait, here's all the things that I wasn't doing because I didn't have time for it, that now I'm still going to work 60 hours a week. You have to make sure that you are truly dedicated to taking that time out of your business if that is going to be your measurement. So that way you're not upset that you're not getting the ROI that you want. So now that we know what it means to have a positive ROI and how you're going to measure that positive ROI for you, let's look into how we actually get team members that will produce this positive ROI, that will be worth the paycheck that we are giving them because we know how we're measuring that ROI. So our first tip is create your ideal candidate avatar. You have to know who it is that you're looking to hire. Once again, as we talked about earlier, this is not just what roles and responsibilities they're going to be doing. It is how they're going to fit into your culture, how they're going to interact with you. What does your culture even mean? Culture is so much more than let's go grab a cup of coffee together on the weekends because we're friends, or go grab a drink on Friday night after work, go out to dinner together. It's more than just that social thing. It is how do they work with your clients in a manner that is going to make you happy because it matches how you work with your clients. How are they going to work with the rest of your team if you have a team? Are they going to fit into your personality when it comes to who you are as a leader? And all of us can probably improve our people management and leadership skills, but there's still who we are as our core and who we are, our personality sides and things that we really can't change, even if we learn and grow our leadership skills and learn how to interact more with each other, that we need to know who we are and how we're interacting with people so we can get the right person on our team. And one of the things that I always say is just because someone's good at what they do doesn't mean they're right for you. So our ideal candidate is not only saying, are they good at what they do, but are they right for us? So here's how to determine your ideal candidates. The first thing is to determine what help you need. Okay, well, what exactly are they taking off your plates? What is this person really doing in your organization? You need to know that. You need to know sometimes, especially if you're going for that financial ROI, what tasks can you delegate that are going to give that biggest boost, that are going to make it worth it to hire? So then maybe you can hire someone later for that time ROI and you know you have the money to cover it. So determine what tasks this person will be doing. What does this role look like? One little tip I'll throw in here is too often people want to hire for a jack of all trades. Don't do that. And we'll get more into that in a little bit, but make sure you're determining who it is that you need. The next thing is hire for an outcome, not a title. So what I mean by this is too often, let's just go for the basic. A lot of times people's first hire is an assistant. And they might even say, I want a virtual assistant. Well, virtual assistant is the most generic title there is out there for a position. Virtual assistants can do everything from their main role and responsibility is helping you manage your email to running your whole marketing, and everything in between. They could be doing work for your clients. They could never touch your client work. It's kind of this catch-all title for people that assist you with different aspects of your business. So if we hired for a title, let's say a virtual assistant, how do we know we're getting the right virtual assistant for us? So you want to figure out what is going to happen because you have this person in your business. What are they really going to be working on? And then when you do that, you can really make sure you're hiring for the right person and not just that title. If you go out there and look at a whole bunch of job descriptions for even, let's say, a junior bookkeeper looks different, maybe not on a large scale, but in that detail scale can look different from organization 1 to organization 2 to organization 3 to organization 4. They're doing the same work, but they're doing it different. They're working in that organization differently. So you have to make sure you figure out, what do I want out of this person? One of the questions we always ask our client when we're going to determine this ideal candidate is, what does success look like? What is going to make you happy with this person's performance 6 months down the road, a year down the road? How do you know this person is successful? So those are some of the things. What do you want to get because you hire this person, and not just what was this person going to do, or what is this person going to be called? All right. So next, hire multiple experts, not a jack of all trades. So going back to, as I mentioned, when you determine what type of help you need, sometimes you'll realize, I need help over here. I need help 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 here. Okay, I'm just going to hire someone that can help me with a little bit of everything. This doesn't always work. So when you have to hire for all this different support in all these different places, you really need to think, does someone really have the skills to do all these? Or are these going to be competing priorities? So I'll give you the best example that I can give here. So often people want to give a sales responsibility to anybody and everybody who might have some potential relationship with the client or prospective clients. Oh, you talk to someone outside our business, you get a sales responsibility. You talk to someone outside our business, you get a sales responsibility. Not everyone has sales skills. Not everyone should have sales skills in your business. Customer service skills, yes. Sales skills, no. They're two different things. So when you give people sales responsibilities that it doesn't go with the rest of their work, one of two things typically happens. One, they find out they're really good at that sales role. They love it. They thrive on it. They're bringing you in business. You're excited because they're bringing you in new revenue. So they focus their time on that sales responsibilities, which means the rest of the stuff kind of gets pushed down the to-do list. But you're okay with that at first because you're excited because all this new revenue is coming in that you didn't have to bring in yourself. Okay, but all this other stuff they are hiring for does not get done. And then it's hard to get them to pick that work back up because they're getting all the positive feedback about all the sales and stuff that they're bringing in. The other thing that happens is they just don't do the sales. And then you're frustrated because they're not doing the sales. And you're like, well, I'm not bringing in the business to make it so I'm getting that positive financial ROI. They need to be in charge of getting their own paycheck. And that's the thing is, well, the employees should get that financial ROI for you. It's not always that they should be bringing it in themselves, that additional revenue. It's sometimes that they take work off your plate or take off work off of another team member's plate so they can do the sales. So a lot of times I say, if you want to, for people that want to bundle sales in, does it make sense for sales to be here? Does everything else they're doing fit with sales? No, then you need a separate salesperson. You need someone else. A lot of times when we go to hire, we think full-time. I need a full-time person. And sometimes it's better to hire 2 part-time people than to hire 1 full-time person to make sure you get 2 experts who can do the job that you need versus hiring 1 mediocre person who thinks they can do both. All right, so let's move on to tip 2. So tip number 2 is you need to create a hiring plan. So how does a hiring plan help you find people that are worth their paycheck? So one, a hiring plan helps you attract better candidates. Hiring plan, when it is successful, and of course, we're going to go into what a hiring plan consists of, but a hiring plan, when it's successful, it speaks directly to your ideal candidate. It tells people this is the job for you, this is where you're going to fit in, and everything. So it attracts the best candidates. It then helps easily uncover the right information about candidates. It helps you determine, okay, this person's interested, but are they a fit? And it helps you figure out, are they a fit? And it creates consistency, which leads to better decisions. You can't compare apples to oranges when you're hiring. When you're deciding, is this candidate better or is this candidate better? You need to make sure you're uncovering the same or fairly equal information about all candidates, so that way you can make the right decisions. I've heard people say before, well, we know this about this candidate and we don't know it about this candidate, so this candidate must not have those skills. And being like, but did you ever ask that candidate about those skills? No, but this person naturally brought it up. And I was like, well, we're making assumptions that candidate B doesn't have those skills, but we never asked them. So we're not consistent. We don't have consistent information, and we cannot make decisions when we don't have consistent information, or at least we cannot make the right decisions. And let me give you an example here about how this kind of all really works out in the process before we go into what a hiring plan really consists of. I was working with a client years ago, one of my very first clients, and we were working together in a slightly different package than we have now. So we were working together for 6 months. And during that 6 months, they had the opportunity to hire a new team member. This person, they owned a gym. They were looking for personal trainers. They said to me, oh my gosh, I hate hiring. I never get quality candidates. It's such a stressful process. And I have to do it, but I really don't want to do it. I said, okay, well, I'm here working with you. This is what I'm here for. We're going to help figure this out. So we go and look at the job posting that he had been using. It was about 3 lines long of text and pretty much said, we're a gym, we're hiring personal trainers, apply. A little bit different language than that, but that was the gist of it. And I said, all right, well, there you go. There's your problem. You're not speaking to your ideal candidate. And you're not telling people who really is going to fit in well to your gym. You're not telling people who it is that you want to hire other than a title. And as we talked about, you don't hire for a title. You hire for the outcome. You hire for who your ideal candidate is and everything, not just a title. And he said to me, he goes, yeah, well, I do that on purpose. I want anyone who's a personal trainer to apply. And then I'm going to decide who gets an interview and who doesn't after I look through their qualifications. And I have the control over who I say yes to versus them deciding whether they apply or not. And I said, okay, well, how's that working out for you? And he goes, well, I guess it isn't. And I said, yeah, you're not speaking to your ideal candidate, which actually means you're speaking to nobody. So we went through, we changed his job posting, we created the rest of the hiring plan, and within 48 hours of posting his job, he had 4 highly qualified candidates. One he hired about, I think at the end of the next week. And when I say 4 highly qualified candidates, you might be listening to this and saying, that's not a lot. Well, guess what? You only need the person that you want to hire to apply. So 4, as long as you want to hire one of them at the end of the day, is enough. We don't need a boatload of candidates. And also for this particular position, it wasn't just a personal trainer. It was a personal trainer who specialized in one particular sport. And that took a candidate pool of personal trainers and narrowed it down to this teeny tiny candidate pool. So 4 people seeing this job in 48 hours who actually were qualified for the position and wanting to apply was amazing. It really was a high number in that particular situation. So sometimes your candidate pool is not going to be huge. Your candidate pool just needs to be right. Okay, so what goes into a hiring plan? The first part is you need to determine the proper job title and pay scale. So job title, we can call jobs whatever we want internally, but job title is one of the first things people see on job boards. They're not going to click on it if it's not a match for what they're looking for. So we need to make sure we're calling things right. It also means, like, as we're going to grow our business, we might say, well, I want to hire a chief operating officer. But based on the responsibilities you're giving them, based on the pay scale, chief operating officer doesn't actually align with what the market calls a chief operating officer. So it might mean you have to call it director of operations, manager of operations. And yes, they're going to have these responsibilities in your organization that really are your chief operating officer responsibilities, but it doesn't match what the market calls those roles. The second thing, as I said, pay scale. You need to know what you can pay this person. People don't work just to work. They work to earn a paycheck. So you need to know your pay scale so that way you know you're targeting the right person. If you can't pay what the going rate is for a job, then you need to change the job. So a client that I was working with a few years ago, actually, I think it was about a year ago now, they were hiring a bookkeeper to come in for their business. So they were a different industry firm. They were hiring a bookkeeper to help with all their billing and everything and their books day to day. They wanted someone full-time. Their budget was tiny. They wanted someone highly experienced. Their budget didn't match someone who had any experience. It was lower than most entry-level positions were paying, but that's what they could afford. And I said, okay, well, let's go try it, but chances are we're not going to get the person that you want. And sure enough, we didn't get them the team member that they wanted. And we, looking at the candidates that came in, I was like, okay, here we are, we're looking at this. These are not the caliber of candidates that you want. So something has to change. And if your budget can't change, the position has to change. And so what they ended up doing was taking that same budget and moving it from a full-time position to a part-time position. And when you take that budget and you say, let's say it's $10 an hour at 40 hours, and you're able to take that same budget and turn it into $20 an hour at 20 hours a week, it puts you at a different caliber of candidates. And we might be listening saying that pay is still really low. It could be, I'm just throwing out easy numbers for these examples. So when you change it, you could change how much you pay someone per hour or what they feel like they're walking away with just because you change the amount of hours that they're working. And it turned out for them, part-time for a bookkeeper was actually all they needed. They didn't need someone full-time once they really looked at what the outcome was going to be for that position. Okay, so you know the job title, you know the pay scale, so that way you can go out and connect with the person that you want to hire. So they see that on the job board, they click on the job. So now you need a job post that speaks directly to your ideal candidate. So I already gave you and walked you through the example of the personal trainer. We changed that job posting from being generic, speaking to everyone, to speaking directly to the ideal candidate, and it made a big difference. We use language in our job postings like the ideal candidate for this position is for you if. And we list out things that really describe the ideal candidate. It's okay to turn people off by your job posting. It's okay to explain exactly what your culture is like. And if people say, I don't want to work there, for them not to apply. You don't want them working for your organization if they're not going to fit in. So for example, if you are we work 60 hours a week around the clock, hardworking organization, you don't want someone coming into your organization that's going to be upset that they can't go pick up their kids every day at 3 o'clock and then work again later in the evening and only work their 40 hours and be done. If you're a really big family focused work-life balance organization that, thinks that work-life balance is not just for your clients, it's for your team members as well, then, saying things like that so you get the right person. You really want to speak directly to your ideal candidate in terms of explaining your culture, in terms of explaining what background and experience they have and everything. So that way someone reads it and says, they just described me. This is the perfect job for me. But someone else is going to read that and say, nope, not me. Oh, that doesn't describe me at all. That sounds horrible. I don't want to work there. The next thing that goes into your hiring plan is knowing your must-have and your nice-to-have criteria. The must-haves are the deal breakers. The nice-to-haves are the things that kind of sweeten a candidate, that make them better. This is important because sometimes we think of everything as must-haves and we start getting so critical of candidates that we say no to really great candidates. So you must know your must-have criteria, your deal breakers, and then your nice-to-have, what makes things better. Your nice-to-haves are sometimes the things that says, if they already have this skill set, if they have this in their backgrounds, great. If not, I'm willing to teach them on it. So you need to know the difference. So that way you make sure you're focusing on the right things. This goes all the way to when you're initially checking that resume to the interviews. Sometimes you can go down the rabbit hole of making up stories when you review people's resumes. So when you're very clear on this is what must be on a resume in order for me to say yes, you focus on those things and you don't get swayed by things. I once had a client tell me when I questioned, I was like, okay, why is this candidate getting an interview? And they thought about it. I said, all right, do they have the must-have criteria? They looked at it. They're like, no. And I said, okay, well, why are you saying yes to this candidate? And they thought about it again. And their response was, because the resume is pretty. And whenever I tell this, when I'm in front of a group of people, they laugh, and you might be chuckling there yourself too. And when you think that is ridiculous, why would I do that? Why would anyone say yes because the resume is pretty when they know what they should be looking for? And the thing is, we're human. We get biased by things that we don't even realize are swaying us. So we really need to focus on what our must-have criteria are. So we say yes to the right candidates and no to the wrong candidates. Okay. And then the last thing here for what goes into that hiring plan is a minimum of 2 interview guides. Yes, I don't care the position. You need to have 2 rounds of interviews. The first one is typically a shorter interview. Typically, you'll do it over the phone or over Zoom or whatever, a video type platform. And the next one is either remotely if you're hiring for a team member that's fully remote, or in person if that person is going to be working for you in the office or in a hybrid capacity. 2 interviews. One of the questions I get, well, if I'm hiring a low-level position, so let's say a position that's $20 an hour or less, why should I put all this time into interviewing? Well, if you're hiring someone, it's worth getting the right person. So put the time into interviewing. I can tell you almost you're going to ask different questions. You're going to dig into different things that first interview and that second interview. So it's not like it's a repeat of things. It's a different interview. You dive deeper. And there will be people who pass that first interview that you're like, oh my gosh, they're amazing candidates. They get to that second interview and you're like, and now they're a definite no, because you dig into different things. But you also want to make sure you don't waste your time interviewing candidates that are not worthy of going on to that second interview. And you don't want to waste your time and you don't want to waste a candidate's time. So say we're just going to do everything in the first interview, not worth it, because you're then wasting your time. You're blocking off more time on your calendar than you really need. So quick first interview and a more in-depth second interview. It also helps you figure out dedication. Is the person even going to show up for a second interview when you extend that opportunity? So 2 interviews at a minimum should be in your hiring plan. Typically, I say no more than 3, but some organizations that have a team like bringing in a third opportunity for them to meet with other team members, get team member inputs. So sometimes 3 is okay, but no more than 3, no less than 2. All right. So one of the things I just want to remind you when you're going through the hiring process is there's no room for emotions. It is not your job to give a person a job. It's your job to hire the right person for your business. You're going to feel for people. You're going to connect with people. But you need to make sure they're the right person for the position before you let your emotions become part of the process. If you're deciding between 2 candidates and they're both equally qualified, and the one you feel this emotional need to hire them because maybe they shared some story with you or things like that, hire them. But if they're not right for the position and you hire them, it's just going to be so much more taxing on you in the long run when it comes to managing that team member. So make sure you're not letting your emotions overrun the facts throughout the hiring process. All right. So you've hired someone, but now you have to manage that team. So let's move on to tip 3, which is take the proper time to set and manage expectations. As I mentioned very early on in today's presentation, is so many people think that hiring stops once you present someone an offer, but it doesn't. Hiring goes, and making sure you have that person that's worth their paycheck goes through onboarding. This is still part of the onboarding and hiring, or onboarding is still a part of the hiring process, because it's still a part of, we have to make this person fit into our team. They are not a fully functioning team member yet. And so you really need to set the expectations and manage the expectations in order for someone to be successful. One of the questions or pushbacks that I always get here is, but I'm hiring an expert. I'm not hiring someone entry level. And maybe that's going to be true for you. But the thing is, even if you hired someone that is an expert, they've been doing this for years, they have never done it for you. They have never done it inside your organization. They have never worked with your processes, your systems, your clients. And even if you're not training them on how to do the actual technical tasks, you still need to teach them how to be successful doing it within your own business. Okay. So this is one of the things I always love to share. Because I said so is not an answer. This really came to me. It was kind of one of those light bulb moments of, I have 2 kids, and this was years ago, and I was at Target with my oldest. And I was looking at something, and she said, "Mommy, can we go over to the toy section?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Why not?" And I said, "Because I said so." And she just put her little hands on her hips and shook her head and goes, "Mommy, because I said so is not an answer." And I was just like, okay, like kind of in that middle of, I can't believe she just said that to me in the middle of Target. Like there's other people walking around, like just kind of chuckling to themselves because they just heard this like little 4-year-old like say this, and kind of mix of that and then mix with like, well, she's right. Now, just to give you a little insight, my oldest has always been extremely logical. She's one of those kids where people like, you can't reason with a toddler. And I was like, I know, but you can reason with her. You tell her, you got to do this because you got to do this. And she'll be like, no, I don't want to. And it's like, okay, you got to do this because blah, 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 whatever it is. And she'd be like, oh, okay. And then she'd go and do it. So she was someone that if always you explain things to her, she got it, she did it, she would repeat those things in the future, things like that. She was very logical. She wanted to know things. And so when we're there at Target, I realized when she was asking why, it wasn't so much to push that we needed to go to the toy section now and being that kind of like, but I want to go. I want to get a toy. I want to look at the toy. That wasn't why she was asking why. She was asking why because she was trying to figure out, why can't we go today? So I know when I can properly ask in the future. And it dawned on me, it's like, that is really exactly what it's like in business. We need to explain things to our team members more than because I said so, because we need to help them make the right decisions in the future. So this is all about setting proper expectations. And I will say, if when you're going to set expectations, if the only reason you can think that something should be done a certain way is because I said so, guess what? It's personal preference. And we need to start letting go of our personal preference when we hire people to help us, understanding that other people's personal preference might actually be better than the way we've been doing things. So how do you go about and set expectations? The first thing is to determine what it means to do the job right. So as I said, sometimes we have these personal preferences that we need to let go of. But sometimes there's things that need to be done a certain way because they actually need to be done a certain way. When we do things like this, it matches our client expectations. When we do things like this, it matches regulations that we have no choice but to follow. When we do things like this, it matches our branding. It matches this. It's more than because I said so. So we need to know what it means to do the job right. And sometimes that means there's a little bit of gray area as long as they reach this right outcome. And sometimes it's going to mean that you have to do this step, then this step, then this step, then this step. So what does it mean to do the job right? Well, after you determine that, you have to tell people those expectations. You have to tell people what it means to do the job right. Too often when I'm talking to businesses about team members when they're having performance issues, is they'll say, well, I want a team member to do this and they should be doing this. And I'll say, well, when did you train them on that? And they'll say, well, I didn't. Shouldn't they just know? And I said, well, how do you know it's done that way? They're like, because that's the way I've always done it. Okay, well, you came in, you decided it was done this way because that's the way you wanted to do it. And now that's your process. But they don't know that. You need to communicate that to the team member. You need to train on it. And it's okay to realize that you forgot to train on something, you forgot to communicate something, and going back and communicate to them later if you didn't do it up front. Because sometimes we don't realize what we're doing out of our habits versus what is the normal and natural way for people to do things. So it's okay to say, listen, I realize I forgot to train you on this, but we need to do things this way, and take the ownership versus just being like, you're doing this wrong, fix it. Okay. When you do communicate those expectations, you really want to include the why. So as we talked about, because I said so is not an answer. So if you're going to say it needs to be done this way versus this way, and sometimes including the why really helps. Instead of creating a report like this, we create the reports to look like this because this is what our clients expect. And these are the examples and everything that we give them when they sign up. So they know what they're looking at. We work with clients that are very new to this process, and we want to make sure things are as simple as possible when we communicate things out. We have to follow this because of this new regulation that was put in place. And so while old processes were this, we know when we do this, we are 100% in compliance. So things like that, where you're really explaining the why. The why helps people go from, well, they're just being a nag. Does it really need to be done that way? To, oh, now I see it. Now I understand it. I understand why this is important. When you see that people are not doing things right, provide feedback and explain the difference. One of the things here is a simple example, employees coming in late. A lot of people get upset when their employees come in late, when they have set start times, but they don't say anything. They just assume the employee will get their act together and come in on time. But what happens? That employee came in late once, maybe it was a fluke. Maybe they got stuck in traffic because they're still on that new pattern of traffic, that new commute. They come in late again, still nothing is said. Okay, I guess there's a little bit of flexibility here. No one cares if I'm 5 minutes late. So they come in again, late, no one says anything. Oh, wow. Okay, this is great. I don't have to worry about being here right at 9 and ready to go at 9 because, there's that grace period here. So they learn, because they weren't provided feedback, that there's a grace period for coming in of what that on time means. But you on your side, you're like, oh my gosh, they're late. They're late again. Why aren't they dependable? Why are they not getting here on time? How hard is it to get here at 9 o'clock when they start at 9 o'clock? Why is 9:05 they think is the start time? And so you're not resetting the expectations. You're not teaching them that what they were doing was wrong. So they're going to keep on doing it because they think what they're doing is right and okay. So that's the one reason why you have to provide feedback. The other thing is when we talk about explaining the difference is sometimes people can't see the difference themselves until the difference is explained. So people have different points of views. They have different perspectives. So they might sit there and say, I got it. I did exactly what you asked for. And you're sitting there and saying, no, that's not exactly what I asked for. And so when you say, here's what you did, here's what it should have been, here's the difference, and here's why the difference matters, you can start closing the gap and get their point of view closer to your point of view. Because remember, everyone comes in with different backgrounds. Everyone has a different point of view. So while they hear your words, what they interpret as the meaning of your words might be different than what you meant by those words. And the last thing is retrain as needed. So a quick example that I'll give you here to understand why retraining is needed. A lot of people are like, oh, I trained them once. Why do I have to do it again? We're human. We don't absorb everything the first time. I guarantee you, if you go back through this training, you're going to catch on more than what you've caught on so far. Think of it like this way. We've all had movies that we love that we've seen more than once. We watch it that second time. We pick up on things that we didn't pick up on the first time. Why? The movie's exactly the same. Nothing changed. It's exactly the same movie as it was the first time. So why do we see things differently? Because our baseline knowledge had changed. We didn't know we weren't absorbing things the first time. So everything was right in front of you and you didn't absorb it. So sometimes it's the same with training. You tell them everything that they need to know, but they don't realize that they're not absorbing things. So sometimes you need to retrain until they fully get it. Some people will always ask here, well, what's the difference between understanding that they're on the right path and someone who's never going to get it? It's looking for the difference every time you retrain. Can they show that they're on the right path of progress? Or are they not making any changes after you retrain them? Or do they make changes for a day or two and then go back down to where they were? If they're not showing progress and consistent progress and upward mobility to where they should be, then that's potentially an issue that they're never going to get it. Okay, so there you have it. Those are the 3 tips on how to get employees who are worth their paycheck. So if you want to keep growing your business so that you can grow your revenue, get time back in your day, and make an impact on the lives of others, you have to hire. So it's important to get the right people on your team so that way you can keep moving forward. You can keep growing your business. You can keep scaling your business. And most importantly, you want to do your work so that way you get employees that are worth their paycheck. Because when you have employees that are worth their paycheck, it makes all the difference. So if you still have questions or anything, feel free to reach out to me. On the screen here, you got my email address, you got my website, you can connect with me on Facebook or Instagram at Growing Your Team, and you can reach out to me with any questions that you have. I'm happy to answer your questions. And if you're ready to get support to find the right person for your team, send me an email at jamie@growingyourteam.com. And we'll set up a call to figure out what is the right support for you that Growing Your Team can offer so you can get the team members who are worth their paycheck. So remember, team members are an expense, but they are a good expense when you hire the right people for the right position. And you'll get that ROI that you truly want because you add people to your team.